Many families who have been touched by heroin came up with ways of their own to fight the epidemic, but they're not alone. Law enforcement is implementing new programs to crack down on dealers. For Officer Juan Wilson, fighting heroin is not just his job, it's his passion. A typical day for DEA officer Juan Wilson includes investigating leads and shutting down drug dealers. More specifically, he wants to find the person who sold the drugs that caused somebody to overdose. He didn't start his law enforcement career with the intention of battling drugs. After graduating from the police academy, Wilson worked as a patrol officer, but it didn't take long for him to know he wanted to do something more.
I really wanted to get into narcotics. I know I wanted to get into a specialty field, and I thought that might be the best way to kind of serve my community.
Wilson first knew he wanted to focus on heroin when he lost his father-in-law to an overdose. He spent about 2.5 years as an undercover task force officer in hopes of getting drug dealers off the streets. But a normal day at work turned into a day that he would never forget.
Towards the end of my task force time there, I got robbed at gunpoint. That kind of put a lot of things in perspective, especially since at the time my son was going through chemotherapy and radiation treatment from brain cancer. So I wanted to kind of slow things down.
So Wilson moved from undercover in St. Charles to being part of the DEA's task force team. But slow is not the right word to describe his job. Officer Wilson is currently working on 35 overdose cases, many of which are right here in St. Charles County. DEA Group Supervisor Kevin Merkel knew immediately that Wilson would fit in with his team.
I recognize the talent that he has for doing the overdose and the passion that he has doing community outreach and talking with folks about the dangers of addiction. I know that he's more involved than any other policeman that I've ever worked with.
You do one thing, there's so much more that needs to be done. I always feel like I'm not doing enough. And so I'm always trying harder and harder and harder to try to, be more vigilant in the community.
One group Wilson is involved in is Walking for Wellness. He became active after noticing a pattern. He says families who lost a family member to heroin were being treated poorly by law enforcement. He feels joining the Walking for Wellness group was a way to end that cycle. St. Peter's mother Guy Vigna lost her daughter to heroin 3 years ago. She started the Walking for Wellness group to raise awareness and says Wilson is a key player in the local fight against drugs.
As a police officer, you can't be my enemy in this particular case. You have to be my friend, and vice versa. He takes the time to meet you, he comes to your house, he learns about your family. He has truly been such a very kind, gentle soul.
Having 2 children of his own, Wilson understands the fear of having a child get involved in heroin, and he keeps that in mind every time he sees a young person die from an overdose.
Every victim from a heroin overdose that I've either arrived on scene or saw the photos, they're still in my head, they don't go away.
Officer Wilson has a very strong presence on Facebook and Instagram in order to be easily reached by people who are looking for help with heroin. He will also be joining us later in the show to expand on more ways that law enforcement is cracking down on the drug. Naloxone is a drug used to help people who are suffering from a heroin overdose. Walgreens Pharmacy already has naloxone available without a prescription in the 35 states where state law allows. Missouri House Representative Steve Lynch proposed a bill to make Missouri one of those states. The bill passed with overwhelming numbers through the House and will now face the Senate. In St. Peter's, Central County Assistant Fire Chief Steve Brown says the law allowing anyone to purchase the drug is an important step to saving lives.
A tremendous number of calls within our community where we've had patients that have died from opiate overdoses. We want to have all the tools available for us to be able to do the job, and if this is a tool that we can get out in the community that helps save a life, it doesn't matter, we want it to be out.
In addition to Walgreens, St. Louis County police officers will also be carrying Narcan in their vehicles. All St. Louis County commissioned police members must go through training before they can use the antidote. Police departments have been able to carry Narcan since 2014, but few have taken advantage of that ability. The medication can also be used as an antidote for other overdoses caused by prescription opioid medications. Up next on LUTV News, we will talk to a DEA officer, Juan Wilson, about how law enforcement is approaching the heroin problem in this area. He'll tell us why we are seeing so much of the drug and what law enforcement is doing to make it stop.